Okay, hello and welcome. Thanks everyone for joining us on today's webinar, Take a Closer Look at Fax over IP. This is Ann Rude with AVST Marketing, and today we have two presenters. Ed Sukis is our Senior Sales Engineer here at AVST, and we also have presenting Greg Settle, who is the UC and Distribution Manager with OpenText. And so without further ado, I will go ahead and turn it over to Ed, who will get us started.
Thanks, Ann, and thank you to everyone who joins us today on this webinar. We know how difficult it can be to take time out of your busy day, and so we have these webinars on a pretty regular basis every month, and well, we just appreciate that you come and take a look at what we have to offer. For those of you who aren't necessarily familiar with AVST, we should tell you that we're an enterprise-class unified communication software application, and with 30 years of experience in the industry, we are considered best of breed in solutions relative to three key unified communication market segments. They happen to be mobility, voice, and business process. We have the broadest interoperability capability of any firm in the marketplace, and given today's topic, you'll get an understanding of why we say that. In this 30 years of experience or existence, this product has spread itself worldwide with well over 10,000 customers, as you can see here. And our mission is to transform enterprise productivity through enhanced UC, or unified communications. Speaking on that experience, we originally started out as a voicemail call processing system over 30 years ago, and it truly is one of those couple of guys in a garage stories where the product was originally developed, actually the first PC-based application of its kind in terms of voicemail and call processing. Some years later, we became aware of the fact that this new and upcoming technology called facsimile was going to make a whole lot of sense in including it into our product portfolio, and is how we, in fact, ended up incorporating the WriteFax application into what we were delivering, and we're naturally going to be talking quite a bit more about that today. Sometime later, again, unified messaging became quite a topic in the industry, and along with integration to email platforms and our already existing integration into the WriteFax faxmail platform, we were able to deliver unified messaging quite a long time ago. Along with that, business process, otherwise known, or what used to be known back then as IVR, interactive voice response, was an ability that we developed to get into back-end databases, integrate with back-end databases where we could provide over-the-telephone type of applications, giving callers access to their account information, for example. And then again, along the way, about 15-plus years ago, we were acquired by a company that was, in fact, developing a speech recognition interface, and that had been added to the product, along with the personal assistant capability many of you may know about, having to do with find me, follow me, and availability, and things of that nature that we are, in fact, talking about today. And all of this is taking place more often lately than not over SIP technology and IP-based integration, which really has become the de facto standard for integrating multiple applications in the marketplace. So I think right about this time, we're going to talk about how we came to be with or integrated or partnered with the WriteFax product. We have a long history with OpenText and the WriteFax product. In fact, at one point in time, WriteFax and Call Express, as it was known back then, were part of the same company. So we developed a very tight integration, unlike any other in the industry, in terms of what we can do with voicemail and fax, give an example, that business application scenario where one could call in and gain access to their database information. Perhaps they could also have it faxed to them. And as I mentioned earlier on, the Call Express product was acquired and AVST was formed, and fortunately for us, we continued that partnership with the RightFax folks and have continued to be able to provide faxing solutions along with what we do at AVST. CXE and RightFax benefits. This does provide a true unified messaging experience in terms of our integration here. We're able to send and receive and manage voice and fax and email through a single interface. Location doesn't really necessarily make sense anymore because we're always at work. It really doesn't matter what our location is, so it's really about the interface that you're using. So if it's a desktop interface or a web interface or perhaps even a speech interface, we're able to access all these different message types and process them as they need to be. What makes the integration also from an administrative point of view very useful is that there's a common user interface for administration with an ability to admin both CXE voicemail and RightFax faxmail users through this one single point of entry. With the strength in the CXE's automated attendant applications, any information stored in a fax library can also be made available. Now, this is somewhat of I guess, an older technology or an older application, use of an application, but still there are many vertical markets today that still use fax in a way in which we're dealing with business to individual rather than business to business, although I'm sure there are applications there as well. But the ones I think you'll be more apt to recall or recognize are things like, mortgages and real estate transactions where it's a company and an individual having to sign documents and send and receive them back and forth to each other. In fact, certainly provides that capability along with an integration to the CXE. We can sort of automate that whole process. And again, as I mentioned earlier on, the IVR applications make it possible for callers who need to access this information and actually receive a copy of it on paper. We're able to develop custom applications that will allow them to gain access to that type of information. Another good one is healthcare, for example, needing to get their personal records. So with that, I think we'll introduce Greg Settle from OpenText. Greg?
Thanks, Ed and Ann. I'm happy to be here today presenting with you, AVST, our longtime partner. What I'll do here today is talk a little bit about OpenText and RightFax in the market. We'll talk a little bit about RightFax as a fax server solution for those that may not be super familiar with the product. And then we'll jump into the primary part of the presentation, which of course is fax over IP deployments in an IP-based environment. So with that, we'll take a look at this first slide here. Really, this slide is some analysts' quotes, some market share, and some positioning here. What this really speaks to is not only RightFax's overall success as a fax server solution in the market, but also its longevity, its ability to support a variety of evolving spaces where fax is deployed, and again, what we're going to speak to here today, which is fax over IP. So, but this is a very important slide that the RightFax server is relied upon in the market. It's very prevalent in the market, and it's enjoyed a great, long, and successful life to date. Ed, do you have control or do I? Here we go. Thank you. One of the strengths of RightFax and what has made it such a successful and evolving product over the years is its ability to integrate to a variety of back-end applications, and you have a variety of usability functionality associated with it. So fax traditionally was something that was send and receive from the desktop, so a big change from having a fax machine. And 20 years ago, that was the predominant requirement for fax. I want to send from my desktop. I want to send and receive from my email environment. But that's evolved quite a bit over the years, and now what drives fax is not only that original request, but also the ability to integrate to a variety of back-end applications, as well as unified communications environments. So you see here things like ERP applications such as Oracle and SAP, the ability to integrate in multi-function print devices for hard copy paper so that you can now use those devices, which are very prevalent across the enterprises out there, and use those as a hardware client device to fax hard copy paper and have everything centralized at the fax server. And again, we keep up with our partnerships here like AVST, and we do a lot of testing in the IP space and fax over IP space to make sure that our unified communications, send and receive and integrations are current and functioning properly. And again, we'll talk a bit more about that as we go forward. But generally speaking, if you can print from something, you can generally fax from it, and we've sought to be a leader in that space over the years. So the way that WriteFax is used, again, I brought this up originally, faxing from the desktop was one of the, again, the original requirements and requests from organizations to move away from fax machines and hard copy paper. And we have strong history and integrations with our partners over at IBM, Lotus Notes, Microsoft Exchange. We also have a generic and secure SMTP and POP3 gateway for environments today such as Office 365 and Google Mail. Additionally, there's a WriteFax print driver that you can print a fax from an open document at your desktop. We do have our own client called the Fax Util, which is a thick client at the desktop, and we have a thin client version of that, a web client, if you prefer not to deploy a thick client to everybody's desktop. And we do offer administrative tools, both thick and thin clients, if you will, to administrate WriteFax. So a variety of options in how the product is interfaced. An area that's equally important here, and I touched on it a bit with the ERP integrations, is our ability to integrate with virtually any system. And you'll see here that any type of host application, back-end application, whether that be a financial application such as an ERP or a healthcare application, an EMR, EHR type system, we have the ability to take a print stream or a document from that application and send it through the fax server. You see a variety of input methods mentioned here. We have what's called a WriteFax integration module, which may or may not be relevant here, which provides a nice toolkit to develop these types of integrations. Very, very important part of what the fax servers do in the market today, especially in environments like healthcare and finance, where large volumes of fax are being sent. And in fact, many of our largest clients, this is in fact how they do fax documents today from back-end applications where it's high volume, could be invoices, notifications, purchase orders, healthcare insurance information, loan information, etc. So quite a bit of faxing being done in this method. Very, very important in the market. We do support virtual implementations of WriteFax. So we do regular testing with both Hyper-V from Microsoft and VMware. This is really what leads us into fax over IP. They kind of go hand in hand somewhat, and we'll talk a bit about that as we go forward here. But we do have full support for Hyper-V and VMware ESX 3.0 1 and later. And as we'll see as we go forward, fax over IP deployments, having a software fax server, this is a natural deployment environment for that. And you'll see something down here called a fax gateway in this pictorial representation. And what that is another option that we will talk a little bit about in a fax over IP environment. So if we don't have a complete voice over IP environment today, we have what we call a hybrid environment, a little gateway device that can convert traditional signal to fax over IP. And we'll talk about that as we go forward here. All right, so fax over IP. Primary reason I guess we're here today. As you can see, We have a lot of partnerships up here in the upper right represented, and we do testing with these folks on a regular basis. Again, fax over IP, when it came about, allowed the fax server to be a complete software solution with a T38 integration interface built in. And that allowed us to replace the traditional fax boards. Maybe you remember Brook Trout fax boards in the past, so we were able to replace those now with a software solution, which again gets us to that virtualization we just talked about. And again, below, when you see the fax gateway down there, the fax gateway is an optional component that can be used as a hybrid environment if we cannot integrate directly from the fax server, the T38 integration, to a voice over IP endpoint that supports fax over IP and T38. So the gateway can help if we only have maybe an analog or a digital interface, and convert us to fax over IP and get us to a virtual fax solution. But this is a common environment that we see out there today. These are our common partnerships out there that we support. We support more than this, but this is what we see in the market, generally speaking. So, also, if you've got a voice over IP environment, fax over IP pretty much is piggybacking on the top of that IP network, and is pretty much easily deployable there. T38 is the standard for fax over IP that we use today. There are a couple of call control protocols that are standardized, SIP being the primary one used, and we also do support H.323. And that is the primary way that fax over IP is supported over a voice over IP network. And as you can see here, we can support a centralized fax environment, maybe at a headquarters location, as well as multiple IP endpoints or offices out in the field that have voice over IP media gateways or even IP PBXs. So we are really taking advantage of that diversified IP network and what that IP network and those endpoints bring to the table. So it's really an advantage today to be able to move to fax over IP. So some benefits of having a software-only fax over IP environment. Again, we support the T38 real-time fax standard. There is also support for G711, just so folks are aware, then we get that question regularly. But T38 has become the standard for a variety of reasons. Provides some redundancy in packet sending, helps with things like jitter and buffering. It's a standard that we rely upon and test first with. Again, we eliminate the need for dedicated fax boards or cards, which would have a requirement that you would need a hardware server with appropriate PCIe or PCIX slots to insert that large fax board. There's no longer a requirement for that anymore, which is an advantage, moving towards software and IP as opposed to hardware, which has a shelf life. Again, the T38 method that we use with our print driver, we encapsulate all of the traditional T30 fax protocols, which is very important for transmitting that message out over the PSTN. So we have a lot of the advantages the fax boards have had in the past as well. Error correction mode, support for V34 or Super G3 fax speeds, if you're familiar. We can even support DTMF routing as needed. And of course compression, which is important. And lastly, there's good resource, less resource utilization that comes about through this process. So lower energy consumption or having a green solution is also important to a lot of environments out there today. And again, I know we're all looking for ways to cut down on costs, and energy costs are high on that list. So a fax server, which can consolidate down to a single, potentially virtual environment using your IP network, we can remove lots of fax devices, analog ports, etc., that are eating up additional power bandwidth in your environment. So this slide, I created this slide a number of years ago, and really what this depicts is the entire fax, both internal and external, send and receive, as well as usability and functionality that you have there with the right fax server. So we've talked a little bit in the beginning about functionality and usability from the back end or the desktop, and again you can see here whether it's a back end application, an email interface, our fax client, multifunction device. The fax server can send and receive in and out of these environments very easily. Now, and then over here on the other side, of course, on the left, you've got your PSTN and fax calls coming in and going out, and that can be through your IPPBX, your voice gateway, and we do that again through the T38 method using either a SIP or an H.323 call control process. So, and again, in today's world, we support a variety of applications also, from the user standpoint. So you're going to see things like Office 365 out there. We have a variety of web browsers we need to support today, and we can support them all. And that's important as we go forward. We continue to monitor and then test against these environments to make sure we can send and receive successfully. But this is a good representation pictorially of everything that you can kind of do. It's a good talking slide and gives people a good idea of where the fax server sits between your telephony environment, your internal network environment, and how fax is moving around. So there are a couple things we can do when we talk about write fax from both a high availability standpoint and a failover environment. First of all, using your IP network, we can do fax over IP failover just off of your environment's media gateways or IPPBXs. Here you'll see, again, we have kind of a central office with some remote offices over here on the right. WriteFax does have the ability to have a primary route set up to send faxes out. So if we wanted to send outbound primarily through, remote office 1 up here or redundant route 1, if that gateway were to fail, the fax server can be programmed to route over to remote or redundant route 2, office 2 here. So we do have the ability to move and automate the process for how we fail over in sending faxes, and that's a great benefit. Conversely, you can do the same thing from an inbound. We don't control that, of course, but you could set up your IP gateways, IPPBXs, to reroute traffic inbound to the fax server based on potential failure somewhere in that network. And then WriteFax Shared Services. This is something that we developed uniquely for WriteFax, and you can think of it a bit as a high availability clustered environment. However, this is not built around clustering. This is built around our own what we call shared services collective environment. And what you've got here are application servers, WriteFax servers at the bottom of the screen. There's 4 of them there. And you've got what we call dock transports up here on the sides, right and left. And think of these as your telephony layers. These could be your T38 fax over IP layers integrated into your telephony environment. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, these application layers at the bottom, they will work and talk to a common database cluster, like a SQL environment, as well as a file store where the images will be stored. So if we lose, at the bottom you can see a couple of X'd out application WriteFax server layers. X'd out, the other 2 WriteFax servers that are up and running are still looking at that SQL environment, that file server environment, so they can still continue to send and receive. They don't know that the other WriteFax servers have gone down. Now, these dock transport layers, like I mentioned before, these are your telephony layers. So we could have multiple points of interface, like I said before, different voice gateways, different IP integrations. Even if these were analog or T1 PRI is possible, but you could have multiple points of interface for the telephony layers, and we're able to remove those from the WriteFax application layer, thereby giving us more points to have redundancy built around. So less single points of failure, if you will. And so this is, again, something that's been designed by OpenText for WriteFax specifically, and this is how we generally build our high availability environments for our clients today.
Thanks, Greg. And so, sort of finishing out the topic of today, we want to just remind you all again, if you are familiar with AVST, and perhaps you even are a Call Express, or as we call it today, the CXE platform owner, it's good to know that you have the ability to add functionality to the platform through incremental investments. Given this example, you could add fax technology to your UC platform, your CXE Unified Communications platform, and perhaps roll out or make an addition to enhance your unified messaging infrastructure.
Okay, it looks like that wraps us up for the slides. Ed, I think that's the last one.
Well, I had just a little bit of
Oh,
technical
yikes.
difficulty.
Sorry,
but
I
now
got that.
all of
I
a
heard the
sudden
pause, and I thought we were wrapping up.
My apologies. There was one more slide, and it was really sort of just reminding you all what we spoke about a little bit earlier on, that in fact fax is still a very useful and prevalent in the enterprise application, given examples here in healthcare, higher ed, and even in enterprise, as I mentioned earlier on, perhaps the real estate industry, the insurance industry, where the transactions are taking place by business to individual, maybe not so much by business to business, but a hard piece of paper requiring a signature needs to be moved about and sent from organization to individual, as you can get that example. So these are three great representations of vertical industries that are definitely taking advantage of what we're able to accomplish with AVST, CXE, and WriteFax. And so with that, Ann, we have reached the end of the deck.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Greg and Ed, for the informative presentation. And I just want to thank everyone who joined us today. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. And, of course, look for future invites from us for other AVST webinars. We run these typically about 2 or 3 times a month. So we'll look forward to seeing you on another event like this, hopefully pretty soon. Have a good day, everyone.